You're good to go.
All right, thank you, Council. I'd like to call to order the regular council meeting of March 23rd to order. Someone want to make that motion, please? Councillor Palmer, Councillor Elliott, all in favor? Motion's carried. The adoption of the agenda. If someone want to make that motion, Councillor Palmer, seconded by Councillor Charlotte, all in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Adoption of the minutes of the regular council meeting for March 9th, 2021. Councillor Brooks Hill, seconded by Councillor Charlotte, all in favor? Motion's carried. Any business arising from those minutes? Seeing none, we're going to move on to item 5A, Development Services. I understand we have a presentation.
Yes, Your Worship, I'll be doing the presentation. I'll just set up my screen here.
Thank you.
Just confirm you can see the presentation on your screen.
Yes.
The subject property owners have applied to reduce the rear yard setback from 7.5 meters to 3.5 meters for a proposed two-family dwelling. If the application is successful, the owners will then prepare and submit a building permit application and an unstable soils development permit application to the city. The staff recommendation is that the application be approved to reduce the required minimum yard setback from the 7.5 to 3.5 meters. And should council not wish to support staff recommendation of approval, council has the options to deny the application or consider to amend it with conditions or defer the application. The details I'll be going over in the presentation today are the background property details, public notification requirements, proposal details, staff evaluation, the referral agency comments, and then staff recommendation. The subject property is located at 910 Farrell Road within Clearview Heights neighborhood. It's approximately 520 meters squared, which is 0.12 acres, and it's currently vacant. It's serviced by municipal water and sanitary and zone single and two-family residential district, R2, designated walk-up residential land use, which is T4 in the OCP, and within the environmental hazards, specifically the unstable soils development permit area. And it's currently surrounded by other residential development. As the application seeks to vary the requirements set forth in the zoning bylaw, landowners within 100 meters of the subject lands have been provided notice in accordance with the Local Government Act. And 15 properties were captured in this radius, and the property owners or tenants had until 1 p.m. today to provide written submission to the city if they felt like their property was impacted or affected by the proposed application. And staff have received no written submissions for this subject application. So the application seeks to vary the requirements of the R2 zone, which is, as I stated, to reduce the rear yard setback requirements from 7.5 meters to 3.5 meters to allow for the location of a proposed stacked two-family dwelling. And you can just see here on your screen, just a look of the building that's being proposed, and then the site plan showing the proposed rear yard at 3.5 meters with a 0.51 meter roof overhang projection, which is permitted in the bylaw as a projection over the required yard. So the application has been evaluated in accordance with the OCP, the subdivision development and servicing bylaw, and the zoning bylaw, and staff are supportive of the variance for the following reasons. The OCP does support a mix of tightly spaced single-family, multi-family housing and apartments, and the proposed two-family dwelling aligns with this T4 land use designation. The site is constrained by a steep slope to the rear of the property and the grade of Farrell Road, which limits where the proposed two-family dwelling can be sited. And development services and engineering have been working with the applicant with the siting of the building to address the zoning bylaw, as well as the subdivision development and servicing bylaw. Part of this has been determining where the parking and access can be fit, and this has required for the rear yard setback to be reduced from their original proposal of 4 meters to this current proposal of 3.5 meters and a slightly smaller building. The historic alignment of Farrell Road has created a situation where the road was constructed outside of the road right-of-way. This impacts the usable site area of the lot, further restricting where the required 4 parking stalls can be located and the corresponding drive-by access to meet engineering requirements. And this condition has resulted in further support for the rear yard to be reduced from 7.5 meters to 3.5 meters. If the variance is granted, the proposed 2-family dwelling will comply with all other applicable regulations in the zoning bylaw. And the proposed 3.5 meter setback from the rear property line is not anticipated to significantly impact the adjacent properties' views or use of their property, given the change of grade between the 2 properties. Sorry, my slide was having issues changing there. So the application has been referred out to the following agencies: Development Services, Engineering, Public Works, Fire Rescue Services, Parks, Recreation and Culture, Interior Health, BC Hydro, Forest BC, TELUS, and the RCMP. Comments came back from Fire Rescue Services and Engineering after working with engineering on the siting of the application. They have confirmed that at the time of building permit application, both the reduced spatial separation between buildings and the fire flow constraints will need to be addressed by the applicant before building permit issuance from the city. And all other referral agencies responded with no comments or concerns. And staff have informed the applicant of this requirement with regards to fire flows and reduced spatial building separation. And these alternative solutions for the fire flows will need to be addressed by the applicant's architect and engineer, and that will be at the time of building permit. So staff recommend that the application be approved. If council is supportive of staff recommendation, then the resolution on the screen in front of you can be considered. Then the applicant will be able to proceed with applying for the building permit and the unstable soils development permit. Thank you. That concludes my presentation.
Hartley. Thank you, Ms. Hartley. Can someone put the motion on the table and we'll discuss this? Councillor Brooks-Hill.
That development variance permit DVP 2020-10. Oh, it just disappeared.
Sorry.
Be approved for 910 Farrell Road, Lot 3, Section 34, Township 23, Range 2, west of the 6th Meridian, Kootenay District Plan 5017, to vary Section 7.3.6E of zoning bylaw number 1264 to reduce the required minimum rear yard setback from 7.5 meters to 3.5 meters.
Is there a seconder for the motion, please? Councillor Elliott. Any discussion on the motion, councillors? Any questions for Ms. Hartley? Councillor Elliott? You're muted, councillor.
Sorry about that. I know that area has been struggling with the water and the fire control, the fire flow issue. Is that on their radar? It must be on their radar.
Ms. Hartley?
Through your worship, yes, there's been a lot of discussion on the fire flows. So the residential flows are adequate, but the fire flows for fire rescue services is what has been in discussion with the owner's agent. I believe the owner and the agent are on the call today if you do have separate questions for them. However, the fire flows are to be addressed at the building permit issuance. So the application in front of you today is for the rear yard setback, and then fire flows. This would require alternative solutions to meet the fire flow. So it's a bit over my head with the engineering fire rescue services, but that's something like sprinkling, cisterns. I'm not sure all the different alternatives you can do, but that would be a technical evaluation from an architect and an engineer at the building permit stage. And the building permit would not be able to be issued until those are addressed.
Great, thank you for that comment. Any further comments on the motion on the table? I'm supportive of this. I've gone over this with development services as well, and And as we move forward, the issue with water will be dealt with at the building permit stage. Again, the agent and the owner are aware of that and have been in conversation with our engineering department, fire rescue department, and we'll deal with that at the time. So with the motion on the table with the rear yard setback, I'm definitely supportive of that. Any further comments regarding the motion on the table? Councillor Brooks Hill.
Yeah, just briefly, I support this, and I think it's good to see people making use of these more difficult lots to get housing built. I think it's great.
Yep, nice to see some infill. Councillor, any further comments or questions? I will then ask. Oh, Councillor Palmer.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead, Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Mayor Sulz. Yeah, a couple questions. So just to follow up on the water flows, it seems we've had similar issues in the past in the city. And I think a lot of people would think that if you bought a lot that already has city infrastructure, there would be adequate fire flows for that area. Are they substandard for the other areas? And maybe this is more a question for the Director of Engineering.
Mr. Black.
Through your worship to Councillor Palmer, this is a local issue. There are a few of these areas in town where we have pipes that are very old and typically a smaller diameter than we currently allow in our design of a water system. And with time, we will get to developing a replacement program to bring those substandard fire flows into compliance.
So through the chair, so basically, like, is there like a 4-inch pipe rather than a 6, or 6 instead of an 8 in the roadway there?
Through your worship, Councillor Palmer, the pipe in this area is actually 2-inch galvanized steel, and so it is very old and very small.
Okay.
And so the flows that we're getting for or the pressures that we're getting are around 40 liters a second, and we need approximately 90 to be in conformance with our own bylaws.
Right. Okay. And then through the chair, there was, I think the house in behind was built, I don't know, 6 years ago or something like that, 5 years ago. So it technically has inadequate fire flows at this point?
Through your worship, that is my understanding that is also true.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Through the mayor, the other question I have is regarding the road encroachment. Again, I think this is a really good development, a good use of that land. It's a little bit concerning about the infrastructure. However, I think it's a good use. The road encroachment, it seems to me that should be corrected prior to issuing a development variance permit. Now, I don't know the technicalities, but I couldn't be supportive of this without that road encroachment being corrected. Road encroachments ended up causing all kinds of problems in the future about entitlement and that kind of thing. So is there any comment regarding the road encroachment? And I'm just wondering if the status of that.
Mr. Block.
Through your worship, in order to address this shortcoming, staff reviewed the project in regards to the existing property corners without consideration of the road encroachment. And so all the setback requirements, the driveway location are all based upon the actual property line, not where the road is encroaching on the property, so that with time we will be able to relocate the road without impacting that property or the proposed project.
Councillor Palmer.
Yeah, through the chair. So it seems to me that the natural use of the road where it is practically situated right at this point makes sense. And intuitively, it would make sense for the city to essentially purchase that corner of that property where the road is encroaching and give even further setbacks to allow the house as is proposed. And again, it's because it's an opportunity that's in front of us right now, and quite possibly cheaper of trying to fix this in the future. I would think is likely quite a bit cheaper than trying to fix this in the future of a road alignment.
Through your worship, Councillor Palmer, when we do come into that location and that area of town to replace the pipes, that will be the opportunity for us to place the road in the existing rights of way. And so we will address that at that time. At least that is the plan. So that it is a small lot, and further acquisition of property makes that lot even smaller.
Yes, through the chair again, I recognize that. I'm concerned about that, and I think now's the time to correct that. I'm very supportive of the whole idea of the variance permit. Without the road encroachment being corrected, I can't support it. I'm wondering if any of the other councillors could weigh in here, or is there a possibility of going back to the owner and negotiating the purchase of that to allow the road encroachment as it is today, and then that's rectified? It would mean an amendment to the development variance permit as it stands right now.
Ms. Wade, any comment on that?
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Palmer. Just picking up on where Director Black was talking, this road was constructed on this person's property. And it's a unusual situation that it wasn't constructed within the road right of way. There will have to be improvements in this area, as Director Black has acknowledged, and the timing of that will be critical on the timing of development on parcels that are above that, and how we can loop in the fire system, which Development Services and Engineering has been talking about. To try to fix this at this point in time would cause a fair amount of delay to the applicant. And I think that we need to look at the picture in this area and how to resolve this in the best way technically possible, knowing that there's other lands out there that will eventually need to be serviced.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Wade. Final comment, Councillor Palmer.
So, Your Worship, on the road encroachment, to me, I think I agree with staff. Maybe from a practical, technical perspective, that's important. I think from a legal and the use of how that road is encroaching on the person's property right now needs to be rectified. That's a problem that occurs, ends up being a legal issue in many municipalities, and I think it has in the past in Revelstoke as well. I would need to see that corrected. I think the timelines is basically it's getting a surveyor, negotiation with the landowner, and bringing back the report. So I don't see this as a really lengthy delay, and it could save us an enormous amount of time in the future. Again, there may be some without a design of the road, their future. It might be a big lost opportunity. And so I guess the one question from the other councillors, because we could table this subject to the next meeting, and to see if that can get corrected before proceeding. But if council's not, I could put the motion on right now, but I'm just wondering if there's any other councillors that could weigh in.
So I'm going to go to Mr. Black and then Councillor Charlotte, and then I want to make a statement.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Palmer, staff are aware of this issue and are requiring an easement for the water pipe that does encroach into the property to be addressed at building permit or prior to building permit. I believe that is correct. Staff member Hartling can respond to that more appropriately. However, we will address easements and ensure that we have all of those documentation in place to address these encroachments prior to the building permit. And so that, I believe, is also part of this report, but it was not presented to council.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Charlotte.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just curious as to whether the owner of the property is aware and is comfortable with the current situation with the road right-of-way and the plans that were detailed to us just now.
Okay. Mr. Cadotte, you are present. Do you want to answer that question? I'll just ask this one time.
Yeah, I'm here. I would like to say something.
Okay. Go ahead, please.
Like we talked about, there's issue with the fire flow. It's unfortunate. There's somebody somehow that was able to build a brand new house a few years ago. I'm not sure how that worked out, but it got done and somebody lived there. As for the road encroachment, it doesn't bother me. We've been working very hard and with Martin, and we've been on this for 6-7 months, I think. We've been very patient, lots of time, lots of back and forth on the design of the property. I bought that land about 4 years ago, and the reason I didn't build on it is because I was aware of the water problem and the road. But at one point, we need to move forward. The water, we're going to deal with it like we talked about for the building permit. I'm not going to be able to get a building permit without the water issue. But as for the road encroachment, I don't care about that personally. And like somebody said earlier, that water issue is going to have to be dealt with because that 2-inch galvanized pipe is no good. And yeah, I think it makes sense to fix the street when you're going to tear everything apart to go deal with the pipe. I think the reason that is probably going to not get fixed is because there's not many houses on that, and the city have so many other bigger problems to deal with. And this is like a dead end road that nobody really go there. So yeah, I think we should move forward because if we keep pushing this back, things gonna really go. It just, we need to be able to move forward, and Revelstoke need more duplex and need more project like I'm proposing here. So please, let's try to move forward with this. And the road is not an issue for me. When it's time to put the road, you guys put the road whenever you want. I really don't care, right? So.
Thank you, Mr. Cadotte. I appreciate your comment. I'll get to you in a minute, Councillor Palmer. Having heard the owner of the property state that he's comfortable with this and the staff realizing that they're going to deal with this at some future date, the motion on the table is to reduce the setback in the backyard, and I'm very supportive of that. It's going to help move this project along, and the proponent will be able to build and get his project in line and also be able to deal with the city and dealing with the fire flows. Mr. Palmer.
Thank you, Mayor Sulz. Through to the engineer. Mr. Black, I think I heard you say that you were looking at easement for the road. Was that for the roadway or not?
It is for, pardon me, through your worship, Councillor Palmer, it is an easement for the existing city services underground and adjacent to the property. So we're trying to address all of these things at this point in time, and when the road does get and pipe relocated, then we can vacate those easements. But we want to make sure that we can maintain that infrastructure until that time.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor Sulz, I'll put in an amendment motion of amending to subject that the road encroachment be protected either by easement or purchase of the property.
Okay, is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Rind. Any further discussion on the amended motion? I'm not supportive of this. I believe that the first motion with the setback is what we are looking for, and having this sort of amendment added to it is going to slow down the process, or the staff already have that well in hand and will work with the proponent as we move forward. Councillor Palmer.
Speaking to the amendment, Your Worship, this actually is protecting the city's interests. I don't see this as being would need to add any further additional time. it's due diligence, and it's the kind of diligence that I think taxpayers expect of council. That's my comments. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Any further comments from council on the amended motion to Councillor Elliott?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just curious, with an amendment, what does this stall it at all, or can we just, is this just a verbal thing that we put in place right now and then we just carry on?
Okay, I'm going to go to Mr. Black. If you want to weigh in, or should I be going to Ms. Wade?
Please go to Ms. Wade, Your Worship.
Okay, Ms. Wade or Ms. Hartling, could you weigh in, please?
Your Worship, thank you. So doing an amendment to this to make a requirement of this as part of the development variance permit issuance would cause a stall. Where it is best dealt with is at the building permit, and there's certain regulations of what we can and cannot ask for at a development variance permit and a building permit. That's why staff is working with the applicant to secure these easements in cooperation with them, given the situation, and that we are working on that with the building permit, and that is probably the best place to be dealing with this matter.
Thank you for your comments. Councillor Charlotte.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not supportive of the amendment to the motion. I think that the building department, development department has us well in hand. I appreciate Councillor Palmer's wanting to dot the I's and cross the T's, and typically I would agree. If it's the way we want things to be done, then that should be part of the rules. In this particular case, I think it would be an unnecessary slowdown. It sounds like the plans for the road are well in hand, and the residents understand the timelines involved in this. I trust that we are slowly working through our infrastructure, and as long as we continue to fund said infrastructure development, we will get rid of these old 2-inch pipes that cannot support fire flow, because that doesn't sound very great. I'd love to see this built, though. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any new information from other councillors? Seeing none, I'm going to ask the question on the amendment. All those in support of the amendment, raise their hand. Note Councillor Rind, Councillor Palmer in support. Opposed? Councillor Brooks Hill, Councillor Charlotte, Councillor Elliott, Mayor Sulz are opposed. So the amendment is defeated. So no going back to the original motion, the variance permit to vary the rear yard setback. Any further comments on that? Seeing none, I'm going to ask the question on that. All those in favor of varying the rear yard setback, please raise your hand. So we have Councillor Rind, Councillor Brooks Hill, Councillor Charlotte, Councillor Elliott, Mayor Sulz in favor. Opposed? Councillor Palmer opposed. Note that, please. The variance permit has been approved. Thank you for your time. Let's move on to the next one, item 5B.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the subject property owners have applied to reduce the rear yard setback from 7.5 meters to 4 meters. And this is for a proposed single family dwelling with secondary suite. If the application is successful, then the owners will prepare a building permit and a development permit to submit to the city. Staff recommendation is that the application be approved to reduce the required minimum rear yard setback from 7.5 meters to 4 meters. And as with the last application, should council not wish to support staff recommendation of approval, council can deny the application or consider to amend it with conditions or defer the application. So I'll be going over the background property details, public notification, proposal details, staff evaluation, referral agency comments, and staff recommendation. So the subject property is located at 1682 Nixon Road within Big Eddy neighborhood. It's approximately 819 meters squared, which is 0.2 acres, and it's currently vacant. It is serviced by municipal water and on-site septic. Zone Special Low Density Residential District, R2A, designated duplex residential land use, T4L in the OCP, and it's within the environmental hazards development permit area, specifically the Big Eddy floodplain. surrounded by residential, commercial, and institutional properties. And that as the application seeks to vary the requirements in the zoning bylaw, landowners within 100 meters of the subject lands have been provided notice. 17 properties are captured in the 100-meter notification area and have received a notice in the mail. And they had until 1 p.m. today to provide written submissions to the city if they felt like their property was affected by the proposed application. And staff have received no written submissions for this subject proposal. The application seeks to vary the requirements of the R2A zone to reduce the rear yard setback requirement from 7.5 meters to 4 meters to allow for the location of a single-family dwelling with secondary suites. It should say single-family dwelling there. Sorry about that. So you can see in the site plan here, you have the proposed dwelling secondary suite with proposed rear yard setback of 4 meters. They've put it slightly back from the dwelling for any sort of variances that may occur during construction, and give themselves room to build the dwelling within the other zoning requirements for the setbacks. So the application has been evaluated in accordance with the OCP, the zoning bylaw, and the development and subdivision servicing bylaw. The OCP T4L designation supports buildings to be placed closer together in the suburban land use than the suburban land use T3, and the proposed single-family dwelling with the secondary suite aligns with the T4L land use designation. The site is constrained by the long, narrow rectangle shape of the property, which limits the building area due to Nixon Road being the front property line. So this is the wider property line with the 6-meter setback instead of the Getty Road being the front. And this is a shorter property line with a 3-meter setback. The proposed reduction to the rear yard setback from 7.5 meters to 4 meters will accommodate the configuration of the single-family dwelling with secondary suite while meeting all the applicable sections of the zoning bylaw. And the adjacent property along the subject property's rear property line currently contains the Revelstoke Seventh-day Adventist Church, which is a setback about 40 meters from the property's rear property line. So this has quite good building separation, and the proposed building location does not anticipate to impact the existing church and buildings on that property. So staff referred the application to Development Services, Engineering, Public Works, Fire Rescue Services, Parks, Recreation and Culture, Interior Health, BC Hydro, Fortis BC, TELUS, and the RCMP, and there were no concerns from any of the internal or external departments. So staff do recommend that the application be approved by council. If council is supportive of the staff recommendation, the resolution on the screen can be considered, and the applicant will be able to proceed with applying for a building permit and the development permit. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Ms. Hartling. So council, can I get someone to put the motion on the table, please? Councilor Palmer.
That development variance permit DVP 2020-18 be approved for the 1682 Nixon Road, Lot 1, District Lot 7, Kootenay District Plan 222, to vary section 7.4.6E of the zoning bylaw number 1264 to reduce the required rear yard setback from 7.5 meters to 4 meters.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for the motion, please? Councillor Elliott. Any discussion on the motion? Any council, you have any questions of Ms. Hartling? Councillor Palmer.
Again, thank you, Ms. Hartling. Both reports well done and clear. Thank you. And just a note on some of the little technicalities. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to actually send an email to staff directly on some of those questions. I'll try and do that in the future, but sometimes it's just a little bit difficult in the timelines. So on this one here, just a note, the sewer capability, it seems pretty marginal for the development here. I don't know if there's any comments on that. I'm assuming this is a septic field and it seems quite marginal.
Mr. Black, any comment, or Ms. Hartling, please? Ms. Hartling, go ahead.
Oh, through your worship, Interior Health was referred on the development variance permit and had no concerns with it, but that the septic would have to be addressed at the building permit, and so they would have to have a registered on-site wastewater practitioner design and install the septic system and meet Interior Health requirements.
Okay, thank you, through the chair. I think it's a good builder that's on that, so I'm sure they're aware of that. The other thing, just from a planning perspective, the secondary suite looks more like a duplex, and I'm just wondering why not a duplex rather than, I don't think functionally it would be much different. So it's just an inquiry. It seems to me that this should be a duplex rather than a home with a suite.
Ms. Hartling, any comment?
Through your worship, we review the application and the plans that are submitted to us. So the owner has proposed a single family dwelling with secondary suite, which is permitted in the zone. That might be more of a question to the subject property owner or agent, but we do review what's submitted in front of us.
Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? This again is dealing with the rear yard setback. It's a long piece of property. I remember the buildings that were on that property several years ago and were demolished, taken away, and property cleaned up. New owner, and this is a really nice development for this piece of property. Any further questions or comments with the motion on the table? I will now ask the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to item 5C. Ms. Hartling, you have another presentation?
Your worship, I believe it's Mr. Simon.
Okay, Mr. Simon.
Yes, it is, your worship. Thank you. Just let me get it up on the screen here. Thank you, your worship. Just want to make sure everyone can see what's on the screen here. We have another development variance permit application. This one is seeking permission to vary the side yard setback requirement for an existing building. As located at 1014 Oscar Street, it is one of the Revelstoke Community Housing Society projects that is on city-owned land. So staff are supportive of the variance, and we do recommend approval for the variance that seeks to reduce the minimum side yard setback requirement from 2.5 meters to 1.51 meters, and we'll get into some more detail on it now. So we'll start off with a brief background, looking at the property details, the public notification that went out for this application, followed by the proposal details, staff evaluation, and finally our recommendation. So the subject property is located at 1014 Oscar Street. As stated, it is owned by the city and leased on a long-term basis to Revelstoke Community Housing Society. Currently has townhouse development on it, as you can see from the zoning map that's overlaid on the aerial. The property is currently zoned Comprehensive Development Zone 14. So because it was a variance application, staff did send out notification to property owners within 100 meters of the subject property. There were 213 property owners that were provided notification. One letter in opposition of the application was received that should be included in the council package. So we do have a variance to reduce the side yard setback from 2.5 meters to 1.51 meters, as you can see in the area highlighted in green here. So the variance request is the result of required road dedication, which is the area highlighted in red, that is required for further comprehensive development on adjacent lands. So we'll get into that a little bit more, but I want to make very clear for council that this variance is required as a result of the road dedication rather, and that it will be after road dedication that this building will be encroaching. So when we're looking at the situation a little bit more comprehensively, we have the Revelstoke Community Housing Society new apartment building complex. 24-unit apartment building is proposed to be constructed on lot 1 here. That is the area highlighted in yellow. We have the existing RCHS row house development on the subject property, again highlighted in red. We have the existing road dedication area as it sits today in orange. And you can see this area in purple, which is the new road dedication that's required. You can see how it kind of completes the overall future road network to extend Humbert Street to ultimately provide access to Lot 1 here for the future apartment building. So staff have reviewed the application and we are supportive of the proposal. The road dedication is required to service lands beyond, as previously stated, and it only impacts the side yard of the current housing at 1014 Oscar, and staff have not seen how this would provide any further impact to the privacy or enjoyment of adjacent properties that are on the other side of the roadway. BC Housing and MCAP Financial Corporation, which are also stakeholders in the Revelstoke Community Housing Society apartment complex project, they do require the variance to be approved in order to execute and deposit the road dedication plan. So the sequencing of how this would occur is the variance application would be considered by council. And if council ultimately decides to issue that variance, that would allow for the execution of that and registration of that road dedication plan and allow for all the relevant stakeholders to sign off on that road dedication plan. And then lastly, the lot created for the row house development, it did not ultimately consider the full extent of road dedication that was going to be required for extending Humbert Street. So for these reasons, staff are supportive of the variance. And we have the recommended resolution on the screen for council to consider reducing the side yard setback. Thank you. This concludes my presentation.
Your worship, you're muted.
I sometimes get staff muting me because of my breathing and I forgot to mute myself. So is there a councillor that would like to put this motion on the table, please? Councillor Brooks Hill.
The development variance permit DBP 2021-004 be approved for 1014 Oscar Street as on the screen.
Thank you, councillor. Seconder for the motion, please. Councillor Elliott. Councillors, any discussion on the motion? Any questions or comments for Mr. Simon? I think this is a prudent way to get this road allowance so that we can move forward with other projects for the Revelstoke Community Housing Society and deal with lands beyond. So I'm definitely supportive of this variance. Any other comments or questions? Seeing Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Mayor Sulz. I'm supportive of the variance. I remember a long time ago, the city wasn't concerned about road encroachments. I'm glad to see that we have now advanced to more modern times and are looking after these little details such as road encroachments. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Elliott, did you have a comment?
Oh, not really, but thank you for the letter that was received. Sort of is commentary more on the Housing Society maintenance. Is that something we should direct on to the proper authorities, or what should we do?
Yeah, I think that will be moved to the Housing Society, and they can deal with that directly with the neighborhood.
Yes.
Thank you. Any further comments on the motion on the table? Councillor Charlotte.
Great, thanks, Your Worship. Yeah, I'm glad to see this coming forward. I know this has been a hang up for a while for these developments. And I think it's really important we see BC Housing invest in our community and build more affordable housing. I do understand the concerns being brought forward by the letter, and I do hope that we can see some improvements and make sure that these developments are being good neighbors. I know you can't please everyone, but there is definitely some standards that should be enforced. Thank you.
For your comments. Okay, Council, I'm going to ask the question. All those in favor of the motion on the table, raise your hand. Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Simon. Thank you, Ms. Hartling, for your presentations. We're going to move on to announcements from the mayor. Just want to let people know that in our community, we now see Public Works out working on the sidewalks, not only in the downtown core, but in neighborhoods. So please be patient as they try to clean up the winter debris, and be aware that you'll see the little tractor coming down the sidewalk cleaning up, but also you'll see the street sweeper out as well. And our community center, we have Interior Health there doing vaccines, so they're open 3 days a week. And as we see across Interior Health, things are getting quicker and quicker as far as people being able to get their vaccine for COVID-19. So we appreciate that. And just remember, when your age group comes up, I just encourage you to go forward and make sure you get your vaccine. All right, so we are going to go on now to item 9A, bylaws. Someone want to put that motion on the table for me, please? Councillor Brooks Hill.
That fees and charges amendment bylaw number 2289 be read a first, second, and third time.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councillor Elliott, this motion is, or amendment to the motion is dealing with us not charging anything extra for those merchants who want to put out their patios and items out on the street. So just as we did as a council last year for those to be able to get outside to keep us safe from COVID, this is what this is going to encourage moving forward. Any further comments on the motion on the table? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimous. Item number 9A or number 2. Councillor Brooks Hill, will you carry that out, please?
That fees and charges amendment bylaw number 2289 be adopted.
Seconder for the motion. Councillor Charlotte, any discussion on this? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Moving on to 10A, unfinished business development services update. We have a verbal from Ms. Wade.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to inform council that we have received an amendment to the rezoning on 307 Downey Street, and that we are going to be working with the applicant this week, and we'll be moving forward with a report and the process, so that it'll be coming before council in April, and this amendment is to include the secondary suites.
Thank you, Ms. Wade. Councillor Palmer, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Mayor Sulz. And thank you to the planning department for progressively addressing what I think there was some misunderstanding, and I think they've addressed that very, very well. I'm really excited to see the opportunity of how we grow in the future with, and this is a small development. I'm sure there'll be more on it later on, but how we can allow higher densification where it really makes sense. This deals with affordable housing issues that the market provides. It makes housing more available for those that need mortgage helpers. It's in a walkable area. One comment that I would have on as they're going through that, and maybe just an indicator to the applicant, and is on the parking. I think the parking is going to be one of the challenges. And one of the things that I would be excited to see is if we think about the future, how transportation is done, recognizing this is a walkable area, whether there's a car share or bike charging stations or something like that. But thank you very much to the planning department and the applicant.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillors wish to make comment? Councillor Elliott?
No, I'm good, Gary. I'm quite. I'm glad they're reconsidering, and I hope that it's a positive contribution to our community. So I think it's a good move.
Great. All right. Thank you, Ms. Wade. I appreciate you working with the proponent and moving this forward. Okay, let's move on to item 11A, CBT Community Initiatives. Someone want to put this on the table, please? Councillor Charlotte?
Sure, that the funding allocations in the amount of $398,056 from the Columbia Basin Trust Community Initiatives and Affected Area Program for 2021, as recommended by the Program Evaluation Committee, be approved by Council and sent to the Columbia Shuswap Regional District Board for approval.
Enter for the motion, please. Councillor Elliott. Any further discussion on the motion? I think the CBT evaluations team does a good job and has looked through things and done the appropriate thing for our area. Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Mayor Sulz. Just a couple questions, and I'm not sure who's would respond to them. But the list that we were given, was that the entire list of applications?
Yes, it was.
And then I note that it appears to me that the McPherson Dog Park Society was the only one that did not receive funds. I was a bit surprised to see that they're the underdogs in this. Just taking a couple hundred from each of the other applicants, and we could have had a full slate approved. And it might be just on how their organization or how the evaluations were exactly done. I don't know, but I'm quite surprised because we're like the only community just about anywhere that's of any size that doesn't have a dog park, and they've been working actively for quite a while. I think this will be an issue that comes up before council in the future, definitely for not only for the dogs, but for non-dog owners and owners as well, that we do need a dog park at some point. That's my comments.
All right, thank you for your comment. Any further comment on the CBT Community Initiatives? Seeing none, I'm going to ask for approval to go to the CSRD. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. Moving on to 11B, age-friendly report. We have a presentation. Ms. Sear, are you going to do that presentation?
Good afternoon. Yes, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to share my screen. There we go. Right, so good afternoon, everyone. Can everybody see the slide presentation? No.
Yes.
Yes? Okay, great. Well, so this is the follow-up from the previous preliminary report. The findings are now in, and the project is about to come to a close. And so this is a bit of a review here for many of you. But basically in 2009, Revelstoke completed its first age-friendly plan and subsequently achieved age-friendly status in 2012, and was actually seen as a leader at the provincial level. It was invited to present in a small video with 6 other municipalities with BC Ministry of Health. And so Revelstoke has been on the forefront of age-friendly for a number of years. It has received UBCM funding in 2020 to update its plan, given that so much had changed with the resort and the growing changing demographics and growing population. So this new plan has taken stock of what was done after 2009 and how the needs of seniors have evolved today. And the new plan is meant to inform upcoming master plans, such as the Housing Action Plan, the Transportation Master Plan, and is meant to help feed into the OCP update that way. So the report has been formatted to fit with the OCP categories, which I'll talk about a bit later. So just a quick review on what is age-friendly exactly. They are policies, services, and structures that are designed to support and enable older people to live safely, enjoy good health, and stay involved in community life. So eliminating any barriers that may exist for seniors in terms of transportation, active community life, and civic participation, things like that. And they are based on guidelines that have been set by the World Health Organization, of which there are 8. And so this is how the report has been structured. The survey was structured in the very same way. It basically follows the 4 main categories of the OCP. And so the 8 categories you can see under growth management, there's transportation, housing, community support, health and wellness, and then culture, which is basically social inclusion for seniors, respect, cultural safety, and community. So social participation, communications and information, civic participation and employment, and the environment, so outdoor spaces and buildings. And you may have noted in the report that environment is actually quite a substantial section. In the previous 2009 report, there was more focus, I would say, on social participation and health services. And so you know, a great deal has been done on that front with interior health and the social sector. So there was less focus on that in this report. The project outcomes for this are to work to continue to incorporate the age-friendly lens into the city's work, and in particular into projects led by the City of Revelstoke through its master plans, and local agencies such as the Seniors Association, other social sector organizations like Community Connections and Health, and the breadth of organizations that exist. Provide guidance on infrastructure projects and bylaws that will support seniors in our community. Provide recommendations to be incorporated into the official community plan, as I mentioned. Promote the engagement of seniors in municipal and community processes.
Lisa?
Yes.
Just so you know, your slides aren't moving.
Oh.
So we're just staring at the front title page.
Really?
From the beginning, if you... Yeah, now they're moving. Now they're moving.
Okay. I'm not
But
sure what
they're on
happened.
the side. Yeah, they're on the side. So if you go from the beginning, if you click that, does it?
Well, that's what I had done. Can you see
Yeah,
this one background?
Yeah.
I think you might be sharing the wrong screen, Lisa.
Oh.
If you have multiple screens.
Well, no, the only option I had
that-
was to.
Oh, weird.
How about
Yeah, we could hear you clicking through the slides, but it just wasn't moving on our screen. So it was like you were presenting to a different monitor.
Should I stop sharing and restart sharing?
No. What slide are you on right now?
I just finished the project outcomes.
Yeah, it's working now. You're good. Just keep clicking on them when you move along.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if I do this, if I go to method, can you see method now? No,
just project outcomes.
So that seems to be the
Now,
problem. I'll keep it in
now
this
we are.
view. Okay, I'll just keep it in this view.
Okay.
So methods. I basically created a survey, started from scratch, even though there was obviously a survey done in 2009. I followed a lot of the categories because they were the standardized age-friendly categories, but we were looking for some different information this time around. And so in consulting with BC Healthy Communities, Jill Zacharias herself, development services, we established that it was worthwhile to create a brand new survey. And put together a working group that was comprised of service providers, frontline workers that work with seniors, and seniors themselves. The survey was launched on September 28th and ran through for about a month to October 23rd. And the main method of engagement was actually face-to-face, if you can believe it. It was COVID, but there were some events such as at the market. But most of the engagement, other than the online surveys, was done through engagement partners. So lots of help from local agencies and volunteer seniors themselves to help get the word out. Given that it was COVID and I had limited ability to get into the spaces where seniors themselves were. Focus was on including the voice of more vulnerable seniors. Some of the repeat members of the working group that had participated in 2009 did mention that that had been missed. So we want to place additional focus on that this time around, and feel quite positive about the number of responses. Turned out to be about 16% of the senior population. And given that it was quite a long survey, there was COVID, we feel that this was quite successful. Bulk of them were online, and the rest were paper copies. So about the respondents, this won't have changed from the previous presentation, but out of approximately 1,810 residents that are 55 and over, 16%, 283 surveys were completed. 69% of respondents were female, 29% male, 1% transgender. 90% of respondents did have access to the internet and a computer. So this is useful for future information, for future projects. Seniors are largely able to access the computer, or at least the respondents were. And then the more marginalized seniors are, preferred the paper method and over the phone also. 34% live alone, 55% live with their spouse. And the majority of respondents fell into what I call the retirement categories. So there was pre-retirement, which was 55 to 64, retirement 65 to 79, and then old age, which is 80 to 100 or 100 plus. And so when we look at who is actually being represented, the old age category is somewhat balanced. But pre-retirement, which actually makes up 50% of the seniors population in town, was only represented by about 23%. And then the retirement population was sort of overrepresented, 63%, whereas only 37% of the seniors population in town. We also captured a relatively diverse population, so captured some voices from just about every neighborhood in town, with the bulk of them being in central Revelstoke, Arrow Heights, and Columbia Park. So for findings, the main priorities were housing. So seniors are concerned about being able to downsize, being able to find affordable housing, costs related to taxes, property taxes. And so this was the primary concern that was identified. And then second, social and community support. And so many seniors did, and I'll go over this a little bit later, but they did express the growing concern for the ability to maintain their houses, given that they don't have or foresee not having appropriate housing. So these are somewhat linked. And then because of COVID, there were some concerns as well around feeling isolated, transportation, accessibility, and finally communication. Okay. So environment, the single most common concern that was expressed by seniors actually was related to sidewalks, lack of sidewalks or sidewalks being in disrepair. And this is year round, but obviously, especially in the winter when snow is plowed onto the sidewalks, making them smaller, they're slippery, not every area is sanded, in time. So this was something that came up time and time again. Snow removal being an issue as well. Some people mentioned the snow being plowed directly onto their property, or them having to step over the big mounds and feeling unsafe as they do that. So it really emphasized the need for seniors walking routes in the downtown core. So these routes, which I will show, were suggested in 2009. But further to the other issues identified related to the environment or concerns were sightlines, and this one was another main concern. So whether it's in the summer due to large trucks or snow mounds in the summer, in the winter, and then things like tree shrubs and branches and leaves obstructing the views in the summer. For seniors that are still driving, this was a main concern, and so the recommendation for that would actually be just to lengthen some of the no parking zone yellow paint to help give a little bit more visibility. I think the size of vehicles has changed over the years, and so I don't know if that's being accounted for in when the yellow lines are being painted, but anyway. And also a desire to expand walking trails. So seniors are wanting to walk, and they're wanting to walk around town, and they're wanting to walk in areas like the Greenbelt, and are expressing a desire to have more walking trails, for example, in the Arrow Heights area, and access to year-round benches and washrooms. So. And just to go over the seniors walking routes, these are the routes that were suggested in 2009. And there are just a couple of suggested changes and additions to make them a little bit, just give a couple more options to seniors. So I apologize, I don't have AutoCAD or a fancy map making software. This is the best I could do. So as you can see, it still maintains the main suggested routes from 2009, with a couple of additions towards Edward Street and adding 5th and 6th, which were streets that came up regularly in the comments as needing repair, needing sidewalks and care, snow removal. So putting these on the on designated seniors walking routes would make it, seniors would know which routes they can go that are going to be sanded, that are going to be plowed in a certain way, and just give them that mobility that they're looking for, and also give the city some guidelines on which roads to prioritize. So growth management. This probably comes as no surprise, but the lack of affordable housing, appropriate housing options, these were the two main concerns identified, and so downsizing is a part of that, but also just the limited supportive housing for seniors and long-term supportive housing. Transportation out of town remains a challenge, but getting to places in town did not seem to be too much of a concern for most of the respondents in the survey. So they're able to rely on friends or get around one way or another. Some use taxi, and some have their own motorized chairs and are able to get around fairly easily. And they expressed need more parking in town, especially near medical clinic and other professional services like optometry and dentist. And just to make a comment on the patios, I just want to bring an age-friendly lens into that. So some seniors did happen to mention that this took away from parking. It made, crowded sidewalks, and it made it more difficult for them to get around. So I just wanted to put that out there as something that that did come out from the survey that relates directly to some of the changes that may be happening over the course of the summer in regards to getting people outside. So. Community. So these are community and culture together, both categories. Overall, seniors are doing well in Revelstoke. They're not feeling especially isolated because they are well supported with their friends and their activities in times other than COVID. So whether that's volunteer, church, and the various activity groups that they join in, they're overall the majority of older adults in Revelstoke are doing well. Many seniors foresee needing support to stay in their homes. So this is the one piece that would be important to look ahead to, given that they are staying in their homes longer. They're wanting to stay in their homes longer if possible, but things like shoveling and maintenance are growing concerns and challenges for those that currently do own some homes. And so being sure that we're able to support seniors in this way is going to be important as we move forward. Tourists and late night partiers and transients were the main safety concern for respondents. So, noise at night, feeling unsafe because they don't know the people in town as much anymore. All these kinds of things did come up. And desire for more senior-specific special interest courses, so personal development, hobbies, and those kinds of things. So seniors are interested in continuing to develop their skills. There was also mention of more and free computer literacy, but there are some ways to access some of that capacity building in town that exist already. So. So it, in some cases, it's just a question of building awareness around what services exist for seniors. So next steps, other than we've already shared the report with council, with Social Development Committee and BC Healthy Communities for feedback, as well as the working group, and we're now entering the final phase. So we've also. Or we're going to be providing specific implementation tables to the relevant departments for consideration into master plans and the OCP, as well as for consideration into future budgeting for projects. And I'll be presenting to the Social Development Committee on March 31st, and we'll be incorporating any comments into the final report over the coming weeks. The report to the funder is due April 10th, and we're on track to have that all wrapped up. And following that will just be some general community awareness, sharing the age-friendly recommendations with the Chamber of Commerce, organizations like the Seniors Association, Okanagan College, for the recommendations that are relevant to them. And so for final thoughts, the City of Revelstoke has made great strides in making this community age-friendly. Of course, a community that's age-friendly to seniors is also accessible to young mothers with strollers and people with disabilities and handicaps. So everyone gains from an age-friendly community. And so as the city grows and demographics change, it will be increasingly important not to leave seniors behind and to continue to involve and empower them to participate as valuable members of this community. That's all for me. Thank you so much. Any questions?
Thank you, Lisa. Appreciate your report. Councilors, can we put the motion on the table, and then we can ask some questions of Monsieur. Someone want to make that motion? Councillor Charlotte.
Sure, I can do that. That the 2021 age-friendly plan update as presented by the director, as presented by Lisa Sear, dated March 1st, 2021, be endorsed.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councillor Elliott. Any comments for Monsieur regarding the age-friendly report? Councillor Elliott.
Yes, Your Worship. Just curious, Interior Health, do they monitor in-home care? Are they the providers?
Lisa?
Yes and no. So they provide long-term care, and they are the providers of the home health services. So they will have the nurse going into a variety of homes, for example. But places like Moberly Manor, for example, or Begbie Manor are private entities. And then there are places like Monashee Court that is BC Housing. But that is supportive. So there are services in-house.
Yeah. So the health side of things, the care, the support for an elderly who can't take care of themselves, we have the resources in our community. Or enough? Maybe.
Not enough. Yeah, there are wait lists. It seems as though wait lists have gone down, but the need is still there. So some seniors have had to move out of community because they could not access that kind of care. When someone is on a wait list, they typically are on a wait list for a long time, and so these better at home style services that are not medical, they're not essential, could be of benefit. So it may not be the community's place to provide health support and healthcare support, but you know, things like home maintenance or home cleaning at an affordable rate, things like that. You know, not every senior is able to afford a private house cleaner or you know, some of the other things that they might need help with, but that they're unable to do themselves or to do themselves regularly. I'm thinking especially of, like, you know, older women that are widowed and living alone. You know, they may not be able to do a large amount of that maintenance, but they may not be able to afford it either. So those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, private enterprise, is it missing, or what? I mean, are they not picking up the opportunity, or what's happening? To go to government, it's a slow process. So I'm just wondering what the answer is. It's great to have a plan, but there's no teeth to it. How do you change things if you know, federal provincial government's the only answer?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, personally, I don't think provincial government is the only answer. That's certainly part of the answer. And Interior Health is aware of the need for supportive housing. And Okanagan College has, I think it's every other year, but has a home health care program. So graduates that are coming out of that program are then able to come and work and provide that kind of support for seniors in terms of daytime care at home. So it is out there. It's just been a slow process in building it up, I would say, and there is still that shortage, and that shortage is actually also linked to the housing piece. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's a tricky one. I think, you know, I'm getting to be the, I mean, I'm qualified for pre-retirement now, but as I get older, you know, I wonder where, you know, do you downsize, or there's not a lot of options, and that relates to our housing supply in general. We need to find options.
Yeah.
You're definitely right, Councillor Elliott. In my business, I get the opportunity to help people as they move on in life, and but for those that are left behind, they don't have the ability to downsize in our community and stay in our community. And this is where a lot of people have been born and raised and want to stay. So that's on all of us to see what we can do to help move some sort of housing forward so that people can stay in our community, afford to stay in our community. Any other comments from Monsieur? Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate your report. So there is a motion to endorse this report. So I'm going to ask the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you again, Lisa. Appreciate your time and for taking care of this. Ms. Wade, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to thank Lisa for all her hard work on this, and that as we move forward and looking at the gaps that we need to do in our infrastructure planning, that we have some guidance on what we should be looking for as we move forward in our long-term planning. I know that Lisa also has reached out to Mr. Komanowski and has a very good understanding of some of the gaps. And so staff is working on these gaps as we move forward in our financial planning as well. And that a lot of this information will be very useful as we do our housing action plan, update our OCP and other master plans. So it's very useful information. And I just wanted to thank her for all her hard work and how useful it will be to us.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Wade. Appreciate your input. All right, we're going to move on. Thanks again, Monsieur. Appreciate it. 11C Development Services. We have a presentation.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, we do. So we have a development permit application before Council. This application was previously before Council in May 2020. Council did approve the development permit, so now we have an application that is back before Council to amend this previously approved development permit for form and character of a mixed-use building. So staff have reviewed the proposal in accordance with the development permit area guidelines as outlined in Area B, being the downtown revitalization area of our official community plan, and staff are supportive of the proposal, and we'll go into some details now about why. So we'll start off with some background on the subject lands, get into some details of the proposal, and conclude with the staff evaluation and reiterate the recommendation. So the property is located at 415 2nd Street West, falls within the Downtown Revitalization Development Permit area, which is Area B again, serviced by municipal water and sanitary services. And as you can see from the zoning map here, it is surrounded by predominantly existing commercial development and then residential development on the opposite side of the alleyway. So again, this was before council previously. So just as a very high level recap, on May 12th, 2020, council approved DP 2020-01, subject to preconditions to issuance, and this was for a single-story commercial building. The preconditions to issuance were never met, so where we're at is we have an approved development permit that was not issued, and since that time, the applicant has amended their proposal to reduce the commercial floor space. They added a second residential story that contains 1 unit and have increased the amount of parking spaces, so that is why it is now back before council again for consideration. On May 12th, 2020 as well, council did approve DVP 2020-01. This was a development variance permit to reduce setbacks, parking, loading requirements for the single-story commercial building. The revised development permit drawings do comply with the previous variance that was issued by council, and staff do note that no additional variances are required to support the amended development permit. So getting into some specifics of the proposal, again, this is an amended DP that is required to regulate form and character of the development. So the proposal includes high quality design with historic red brick exterior. You can see that on the first 2 floors of the building. There's black aluminum windows and doors with black metal pre-finished flashing along the sides of the building, along the roof line there. The first story is dedicated for commercial space. And then the second story does contain a 1-unit residential suite with the portion that you're seeing poking above here is a loft that's dedicated for that residential suite. It could be something for someone to operate, a minor home occupation out of, something along those natures, or an art studio. So when we look at the site itself, so it is currently 1 lot, and that 1 lot does contain an existing single-story commercial building. So you can see that highlighted in yellow here with the associated parking for that building. You can see there's some secure bicycle parking at the north corner of the site, along with an existing landscape strip. For the new building, highlighted in red here, you can see there are 7 parking stalls that are dedicated for the commercial and residential unit. So there would be requirement of 1.5 stalls for the second-story residential, and then a requirement of 5.5 stalls for the commercial based on the gross floor area of that commercial space. So what we get here is a total of 7 stalls. You can see there are 2 sets of stalls here, so 4 stalls total that are tandem parking. Staff have already worked and discussed with the applicant how appropriate signage would be required at building permit stage to delineate 2 of the tandem stalls for the residential units, and then the other 2 tandem stalls would be dedicated for the employees of the business, with the remaining 3 stalls dedicated to visitors of that business. There is some very minor landscaping, and you might recall this was discussed back in May when the original DP was brought forward. This would be in the form of sod or planting beds. Technically, it is in the city's right-of-way, and staff have worked with the owner that they would be responsible for maintaining that minor landscape strip. So staff have reviewed the application against the development permit area guidelines as contained in the OCP, and it does align with those development permit area guidelines, and therefore staff do recommend approval of the development permit. You will see there is a subsequent condition that would require the owner to enter into an encroachment agreement, and this is for the extension of the canopy to go across onto the right-of-way for 2nd Street, and this is required in accordance with council policy. Thank you. This concludes my presentation.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Simon. Okay, so can we get someone to put the proposal on the table here, please? Councilor Brooks-Hill.
Am I reading the whole thing? I think I'm reading the whole thing at once, right? Yeah.
Yes.
that amended development permit DP 2020-01 for form and character of a mixed-use building located at 415 2nd Street, parcel B, KM 17097, block 8, section 34, township 23, range 2, west of 6th Meridian, Kootenai District Plan 636 be approved, and that as a condition of building permit issuance, an encroachment agreement to allow for canopy cover to extend 1.83 meters into the road right-of-way in accordance with amended DP 2020-01 is registered to title.
Okay, in the form of a restrictive covenant. Is there a seconder for that motion, please? Councillor Elliott. Any comments or questions for Mr. Simon? I think as we move forward, Mr. Simon, this is an excellent amendment to this property to see that come forward. Appreciate the proponent doing that. Councillor Palmer, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Mayor Sulz. Just a question on the encroachment agreement. Does that include that landscape strip as well? And if not, maybe it's something that should be considered. I actually don't necessarily need to know for sure, but it would seem that that possibly should be part of the encroachment agreement.
Mr. Simon, comment?
Through your worship, the encroachment agreement is required specifically in accordance with council policy. I believe it's policy DS6, and that policy specifically covers awning projections and other projections of the sort into the city right of way. And typically it wouldn't be including those landscaping components, but it is something that staff have worked with the applicant on.
Right, and so that maybe that's something council should consider a minor change to that policy to include, just to avoid future misunderstanding is a possibility. Thank you, Mayor Sulz.
Thank you, Councillor Palmer. Any other comments from councillors? Councillor Brooks-Hill.
I'm really happy to see this moving forward, and yeah, I like the residential component. I'm curious about, I could have looked this up, but the C2 zoning, would that residential component upstairs be allowed for vacation rental or short-term vacation rental?
Mr. Simon?
Through your worship, the current zoning regulations do not have vacation rental as a permitted use in the C2 zone. As staff are working and bringing back short-term rental amendments, there will be a more robust conversation about vacation rentals within the commercial zones.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, councillors? All right, I'm going to ask the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you, council. Thank you, Mr. Simon. Appreciate your report. Moving on to item 11D, long-term financial plan. Someone want to put that motion on the table? Councillor Charlotte.
That the document, Your Guide to Budget 2021, be approved for publication to the public.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councillor Brooks-Hill. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Charlotte.
I've just got one question. I was looking through it. The financial, it shows that the arena roof grant is still pending. I thought that had been denied.
Ms. McCabe.
I believe it was reapplied for. I'm sorry, I have to follow up with the Director of Parks, Recreation and Culture to confirm that, but that's my understanding.
Okay, no worries. I just want to make sure it wasn't an oversight. Thank you.
Okay. Any further comments? Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Mayor Sulz. I think everyone knows that I'm opposed to the 1% tax increase. I won't speak to this as regarding the guide to the budget. One comment, I remember this some time ago that someone was concerned about the amount of black, and it never really resonated with me, but it did today when I printed out the document. Some may wonder why I need it in paper, and it's to save my eyes. Just a couple comments. One is The first 6 pages is basically an introduction to the introduction, basically what the budget's about, and that's fine. But on page 7 of the report, I note right at the beginning, budget at a glance. So I'll just put it up here. So the budget at a glance says overall budget 0% increase. Now, I know financial people are far more brilliant than me on numbers, but when it says overall budget increase at 0%, to me, that means I would expect a 0% increase. And without getting into semantics, it just seems that I'm not understanding that as it's intended, I don't believe. The other is on the bottom of that page 7, again, doing more with that overall budget increase on that page. We have a whole bunch of zeros in a 1% general tax increase. So back when I was in early elementary school, grade 1 or grade 2, I think I learned how to add 0. So if it was 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus 1, that used to equal 1%. But now it seems like it's equals 0%. The other comment is on page 14. And so it's talking about the average tax increases in the proposed budget. And I did make a slight reference to this, at least I believe I did, about previous years. So this is looking generally is looking to the future, but this is the one time that it looks to the past, and it's the last 10 years. And it comes at 3.74% for residential on average over the past 10 years. I will make a statement that there's a cumulative effect there, but I'm not sure if that's really telling us the real story. What has been the overall average tax increase over, say, the last 5 years? And I think it would be substantially different. So it feels a little bit like a use of statistics to make a budget look better than it really is. So then going to page 17, so a 5-year outlook, general operations. And I don't think I guess we sort of talked about this a little bit, but we're expecting, according to this report, in 2021, 1% increase. 2022, that's when the big impacts are happening at 4.575% increase. 2023 is 7.5% increase. And that's troubling, I would say. So what about that? What does that really mean? I think those are concerns that aren't adequately addressed in the guide for the public to really understand. That's my comments, but I will say to staff, understand putting this document together is an important part. I think we could do more on really providing accurate information, not being protective of high tax increases. Thank you, Mayor Sulz.
Thank you, Councillor Palmer. Ms. McCabe, any comments on any of this stuff? I'm not sure whether we can remember everything that Councillor Palmer has brought up, but is there any comments that you would like to make?
Through your worship, I will do my best. I believe Councillor Palmer started on page 7. He talked about the 0% budget increase and how it doesn't reconcile to the 1% general taxation increase. And so I believe Councillor Palmer may be confusing budget from taxes. And so the budget increase is what the city actually spends to operate the city. And so the actual budget increase in dollars over that is 0%. When you net the revenue increases against the expense increases, the actual budget increase is 0%. The 1% tax increase has to do with transfers to reserves. And so those are not operating expenses. They're not part of the operating budget of the city. So that's why the 0% for the actual budget. And so I believe that staff have done a really good job of maintaining and holding the line to make sure that there aren't any budget increases that would need to require or would require a tax increase. I'm going to go down through the pages and see if I can remember. Oh, I know what the other one was. You talked about 1% plus 0 plus 0 plus 0 equaling 1. So the 1% is a tax increase. The other zeros are referring to the actual fees. So the water fees, the sewer fees, the garbage fees, those fees have held steady. They're the same as they were last year. And so when you don't increase a fee one year over the next, then you end up with a 0% increase in that fee. And so it does say 0% increase in water rates, 0% increase in sewer rates, 0% increase in Big Eddy water rates, and of course a 0% increase in garbage service rates. So those rates have all been held constant. And again, that was in light and trying to reflect recognition of the impact of COVID on the community as requested by the Finance Committee and by Council at the time too. Tax increases in the future 5 years, in particular the really large one, that has to do with the arena roof. We will have to borrow to replace the arena roof, and unfortunately that debt will need to be repaid, and that is the year when the debt would come in. So that's why that's large increase. And then the discussion about the 10 years historical, that's what's been provided in the past. Doing 5 years is something that could certainly be considered going forward. Yeah, it's just trying to provide some historical background for council so that they can see what has been done for businesses and for residentials over the last 10 years. And there has been some definite movement by councils previously to try to balance things out better. So I'm not sure if I've answered everything, but I've certainly done my best.
Do you have a comment?
Thank you, Mayor Sulz. Yeah, and again, I know there's been a lot of discussion on the budget itself. I would like to be supporting the guide, because regardless of my opinion on the budget itself, it's important to have a guide. I think I probably will be voting against the adoption of or endorsing the guide, because maybe I'm the only one in the population that will get confused with page 7. But I think there's probably others, and I think there could be better clarity as to where we've been and where we're going. And it's not, so anyways, it's just on the informations, but thank you very much to the Director of Finance and for staff for doing that tedious process of putting the budget and budget information out. Thank you.
Okay. Other councillors, any comments on the guide? Councillor Elliott?
I'm just curious, is there any way we could track readership on the budget? This is just my just twisted mindset here, trying to find the numbers that actually read it.
You mean the document that's in front of us? Is that what you're asking, Councillor?
Yeah. So we'll just publish this in a pamphlet, but this will be online as well. Are we able to track readership?
Ms. McCabe?
Through your worship, I actually do not know the answer to that, Councillor Elliott, but I'm certainly sure I can find out. And if we can track it, I will definitely be just as interested as you to find out what those numbers look like. Oh, Ms. Lowe?
Ms. Lowe.
Through your worship, so this is going to be placed onto our Bang the Table, our Talk Revelstoke new program for engagement with the community. So I'm expecting that we're going to get more feedback. Maybe I'm just hopeful, but usually we don't get a lot of feedback on the financial plan. So I'm hoping that this will open the doors up and we will actually be able to track how many people are viewing it, reading it, and commenting on it, and that will come back to council.
Yeah, I think it's useful to find out how much people are engaged on this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
If I could add a comment, Tanya, the document is much more succinct than last year. Last year, I think it was a 40-page report. Down to 22 is a big improvement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further comments on the amendment or the proposal here in front of us? Okay, I will ask the question for approval for the publication to go to the public. And I'm wondering if we put this through to the public, there may be feedback regarding some of Councillor Palmer's concerns. And so if so, we're going to deal with that appropriately. All right, all those in favor? Opposed? Note that Councillor Palmer is opposed and the rest of council is in favor. Thank you. Thank you all for your time and for your work on this. Moving on to item 11E, Parks, Rec and Culture Master Plan Contract Award. Someone want to put that on the table for us, please? Councillor Palmer.
That the contract for the Parks, Recreation and Facilities Master Plan be awarded to Urban Systems Limited for a contract price of $89,689 plus applicable taxes.
Great, thank you. Is there a seconder for that motion, please? Councillor Charlotte. Any discussion on the motion? Mr. Nadeau is here if you have any questions of her. Okay. Councillor Palmer, do you have a question?
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor Sulz. To Director of Parks and Recreation, it just seems like we should be making some sort of comment on an expenditure like this. It does seem awfully high to me, and but I do recognize the work that staff is doing, working on master plans. Maybe a comment regarding the senior-friendly routes and how that will inform this study.
Mr. Nadeau.
Through your worship, as part of the community engagement process, we'll work with the consultants to identify stakeholders in the project. So the seniors are a stakeholder that we would go out to and inquire and get their feedback on trails and passive parks. So through that engagement process, we will most likely reach out to them and have conversations with them. As well, we have identified different plans that the consultant will review. One of the plans, of course, would be the age-friendly plan as well, and the one that we addressed at today's council meeting. So we'll have all that information for the consultants to review and incorporate into their consultations with the seniors.
And through the chair, then a second question, the integration with the master transportation plan, looking at how the trails link up with throughout the community and how that's looking in the future as we become more progressive on multi-use paths.
Through your worship, the master transportation plan will also be one of the documents that will be referenced, and the consultants will be working with a core staff team, which will be most likely comprised of myself, the Director of Engineering, the Director of Development Services. So we will make sure that all those plans are aligned and integrated so that there's consistency in all the planning documents that we're creating at this time.
Councillor Palmer, you have another comment?
No, that's good. Thank you, Mayor Sulz.
Okay. Any other comments, councillors? Any questions? Seeing none, I'll ask the question. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Nadeau. Appreciate that. Okay, let's move on to item 12A, correspondence. Councillor Brooks-Hill, you have a comment?
Yes, I just wanted to, say for the record, so previously I've recused myself from this issue to do with the gravel pits in the Jordan issue, Jordan River, as I was the president of the North Columbia Environmental Society at the time. It's now been over a year since I resigned from the board, and as such, I will no longer recuse myself as there is no longer any perceived conflict.
Thank you for your statement, Councillor Brooks-Hill. Councillor Palmer, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Mayor Sulz. I'd like to put a motion on the table, if I may, that staff craft a report for the next council meeting on options to protect the West Side Road, Jordan River environmentally sensitive lands, including timelines to expedite rezoning to parkland.
Okay, is there a seconder for that? And then I'm going to ask staff. There is. Councillor Rind, Councillor Elliott. Staff, what is your timeline? What will have to drop off the table for you to be able to do a report?
Through your worship, just a couple of things. First off, in order to carry out the study that is required, which we discussed historically as part of the OCP, is the natural asset plan. We need money for that, and we need to hire a consultant for that, and we need to move that forward as part of the OCP. So that will take, this next year to do it. That was outlined as one of the plans for the OCP update. Secondly, if this is to be a separate report outside of the OCP update where the natural asset is considered to be part of it, we have to do an OCP update, which we're doing, which would be affected by this. So to do a separate report outside of the OCP, then from our perspective, the OCP is the #1 priority, I believe, for council. So if this report was to go forward, we would have to do something with putting the OCP in abeyance to do this, because we just don't have any other capacity.
Thank you for your comments, for your honesty. Councillor Rind, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was just wondering if it was outlined as part of the OCP process already. Is it, are the funds for those reports or studies included in the OCP budget?
Through your worship to Councillor Ryan, the original budget for the OCP did not include a number of the plans that we're trying to work forward with. I'm working with Director of Finance on this, and if we have to find additional funds, then we will look for that.
Okay, but you mentioned that it was part of the OCP process that we knew we'd have to update this and get those studies done, but
that's correct. And currently this report is in the budget, because that is something that we talked about last year in the budget, was the management, the environmental management plan, and the need to do the environmental assessment as part of it.
So it has been budgeted for?
Yes.
Okay, am I, sorry, I thought you just said that it wasn't budgeted for and that we would need to find money.
So through your worship to Councillor Rind, when the budget was originally established for this OCP, there was a number of items that were not addressed. So we have to juggle the funding around to get the appropriate sequencing of master plans to inform the OCP. If we require further funding after those funds are absorbed, we can consider that in the 2022 budget.
Okay, yeah, I'm lost.
Ms. Lowe, do you have any, you were raising your hand. Do you have something you want to say? No? Okay. Councillor Palmer, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Mayor Sulz. Through to Councillor Rind, I think it's very understandable that you're confused. So I'll just reread my motion just so it's clear. The staff craft a report for the next council meeting on options to protect the West Side Road, Jordan River environmentally sensitive lands, including timelines to expedite rezoning to parkland. So thank you to the Director of Planning for your comments there. It seems that you'll be able to take a lot of that will be integrated into your report should this pass. This is a priority that council had identified some time ago. I was at that meeting well over a year ago now in January 2020, when there was a huge attendance by the public about how important this land is. I recognize and I sort of expect that in the report with the options to rezoning to parkland, that the risks associated will be part of that report. So this is not a report asking for all the work to be done. It's to say, how are we going to get this done? We have had a year, well over a year, about a year and a half, to deal with these lands. The community has loudly stated that this is very, very important. And so it's time to get very, very concrete timelines, how we're going to accomplish this. And so the concerns from WildSite, what they've articulated, I think has been well stated by the community at large, not just those in the more environmental portion of the community. Thank you, Your Worship.
So I'm wondering if we can have this report not for next meeting, Councillor Palmer, but maybe near the end of April to give staff a bit more time to come up with some of the requests that you're asking for. Would you be amenable to that? And Ms. Wade, would that be something that could be done?
So, Mayor Sulz, just in response to that, I believe that this is of high enough importance that we can have a report in 2 weeks' time. You did ask, well, okay, well, what needs to be juggled? And so let's make this the most important thing for the next week. And again, this is just those general things. We don't have to have all the details down, but how do we accomplish this? I would like to stay by with the timeline for the next council meeting. As time goes by, those lands are becoming more and more at potential risk of what the community views as inappropriate, and I view as an inappropriate development on those lands. I'm going to sort of stand to this because staff does the best report they can in that time frame.
Okay, so I'm going to go to Councillor Ryan, then Councillor Charlotte, and then Ms. Wade.
Thanks, Your Worship. I think Councillor Palmer makes a good point. And if this was, as Ms. Wade commented, already in the plans for the OCP, then seemingly there has been some thought put into what's going to be required. So it doesn't seem unreasonable to get just an overview in 2 weeks time from now, just to see where we're at and how quickly we can move on this.
Okay. Councillor Charlotte.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I'm curious, and this is actually, I was reading through the committee minutes, the draft minutes there. They're later on the agenda package from the Social Development Committee. And one of the things we've been talking about a lot lately is how do we use our committees more effectively, especially for long-term planning and discussions like this. And I'm wondering, and maybe Councillor Palmer, you would express your thoughts on this. Is this something that would be appropriate to refer to, say, our Environmental Advisory Committee to get some really thoughtful intake or input from members of our community with that mindset? Or a different committee, or what does that process look like for referring it?
Longer.
So through the chair, in response to Councillor Charlotte's question to me, this has been before the Environmental Committee in the past. They've made a strong statement. I've talked to a couple members on that, current and past members on that, and that this has been a long-standing position already well stated there. I think the referral, I don't disagree with you on more effective use of committees. I think that's another discussion for later on. To me, a referral to the committee is just abdicating our responsibility of council to get moving on this. I think it's been referred enough and it's time for action.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Palmer. Ms. Wade.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I just want to go backwards a little bit. So the natural assets mapping is part of the OCP. That's just one task. And that is required in order to determine what is truly environmentally sensitive out there. The current mapping that was done in the OCP is a PDF and is not GPSed. So we don't really have a technical document. in order to determine the boundaries and the levels of environmental sensitivity, we need to determine that with a QEP and the appropriate things, because it's not just mapping the various vegetation, it's understanding the wildlife corridors, and all those assessments need to be done. That was envisioned to be part of the OCP so that we could clearly understand the state of our natural assets. That will take the remainder of the year to get that done. The second part of this is there was an environmental management plan that was brought up over a year ago as to what Councillor Palmer was talking about. It was slated in the contracted services budget and was spread out over 3 years. I did a table and the decision was made to push it out to 2022. And that funding has to come out of my contracted services, of which you're aware in the budget is very limited. And I don't have a huge amount of money in there because none of these projects were ever properly budgeted for. So we're doing our best to work with our limited funds to address this issue. So there's two parts to this. So that is where the environmental management plan would come into place. The third component of this is that in order to have the proper zoning to this, we have talked about doing environmentally sensitive zoning and determining those zones and creating those zones, which is part of the zoning bylaw update. And currently we do not have environmental zones. And that is something that the staff wants to do, and they want to do it in consultation with the appropriate assessment of our lands and provide the best technical advice. We're very aware of this issue and we do want to address it, but it is not just an overnight piece of work to be done. We require technical and expertise to do this. And so that is why the suggestion was made that we get the natural asset done as part of the OCP. We deferred the environmental management plan in my contracted services to 2022, and that we would actually create the proper zoning to address the environmental sensitivities of that area and to understand it better so we could do this properly. So in response to just writing a report, we're currently in the cutoff for writing reports for the 13th and the 15th. I would have to pull one of the reports going forward. And then I would have to take off some reports that we've already got scheduled and talked with applicants about for the 13th and the 15th. If you would like this report as to what the mayor has indicated, we do need some time to bring this forward and be able to do this because we want to do it in a thoughtful manner, not just off the side of our desks. So I'm happy to bring forward a report in a general way of what we're doing and looking at some of the risks and assessment, but I do not feel I would be doing it any justice to just try to do this in the next 2 weeks. Thank you.
Sure.
Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Mayor Sulz. Again, from the director's earlier comments and the comments just made, it sounds like stuff that's what I envisioned to be in this, some of that general statements about the challenges for the potential rezoning. I'll just make a statement and it's not diminishing. You know, I'm glad that staff are wanting to make sure that things are done in a very robust way. Sometimes we need to have pressure and we need to move along. And this is one that's been there for a long, long time. It's of very, very high community importance. And again, I'm asking for a report as to what kind of timelines would we be looking at for that in 2 weeks' time. I don't think it's unreasonable. And recognizing that all the details of how to implement it can't be in that report. I recognize that. I'll make a statement also, however, that on the rezoning of this to parkland, which is contained in the motion that's on the table, I, as a councillor, am willing to take fairly high risk as to the consequences of what is traditionally known as a downzoning of a piece of property. And why am I willing to do that? Is because it represents our community's interests on that piece of property. And so I know that's a particular challenge as well. I don't believe that it's necessary to have all the OCP amendments. It might be corrected on some of that in order to rezone this to parkland. But even if it's a OCP amendment and a zoning amendment, specifically with this parcel, that is achievable in a fairly short period of time. It doesn't come without risks. I recognize that. But that's why this is important to have this come back to council so the council can make some very direct decisions in the protection of the long-term interests of this land, not just for this generation, but for generations to come. Thank you, Mayor Sulz.
Councillor Elliott, and then Ms. Wade.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just have a question about what is the risk here? How likely is the gravel pit going to proceed before we get our environmental studies done and our plan aligned? Is that a reality, or is it just some fear mongering?
Ms. White.
Through Your Worship, a couple of things. So when we talk about parkland, there is a process under the LGA at how we go about doing that, which would need to be followed. Best practices today when it comes to environmentally sensitive lands are that you look at environmentally sensitive zoning and covenants placed on it to protect the lands from such things as trail building or other invasive, buildings, things like that. Those sorts of issues need to be addressed, which is why in these situations where environmentally sensitive there's best practices of creating the appropriate zoning and limiting what can be done on those. Furthermore, that whatever is on Crown lands is under the jurisdiction of the Crown, and they will take precedence over us as far as what they do from a legislation point of view. When it comes to gravel pits, we are required under LGA to provide gravel pit areas, and we need to sort this out as part of our land assessment of the OCP. Finally, in regards to the existing permit that is out there, it is a temporary license, and there's a series of conditions that are between the applicant and the province in regards to what they have to satisfy and do. And then if they meet whatever requirements the Crown wants, they would have to reapply for a license of occupation. So they have a fair amount of things to do, and that is not under our jurisdiction. It is under the Crown. And so going forward we certainly understand the needs to protect lands, but we also need to look at the best tools and the best practices to do that, which is why previously and historically we have talked about the rezoning for environmentally sensitive areas and to get the right legislative tools in place so that we can address it. So we're trying to do the best of practices and bring in the most recent tools. There's other tools such as conservation covenants that could be put on, and those lands, given to a conservation, but you need people to actually be partnered and willing to do that. That's another tool. What staff is really trying to do is bring forward to council, once we know technically what the value of the lands are from an environmental point of view, based on a QEP and others, that we can delineate those lands, protect them appropriately, and where we can within our own jurisdiction, and then also work in collaboration with the Crown on those areas of concern that might overlap with their Crown leases.
Okay, thank you for the comment.
I hope that answers the questions.
Okay. Councillor Palmer, you have a comment that's different than what you've stated already?
Yes, Mayor Sulz. So I feel a little bit like I'm in a debate with staff. However, I'll just reiterate, I think that's the third piece of information that sounds like might be appropriate in this report for next council meeting. And if there's no other comments from staff or from, that's the confusion that happens. Staff, is this a staff meeting or is this a council meeting? But I suggest that we call the question if there's no further comments from other councillors.
Great. I'm all for that. All right, I'm going to call the question. Councillor Palmer has put forward a motion for a report to be put forward and brought to back to council for 2 weeks' time. I'm concerned personally about things being dropped off the table. I know that this is an important issue. I will not be supporting this, but I am going to call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? So note that Councillor Brooks Hill, Councillor Ryan, Councillor Palmer are in favor. And Councillor Elliott, what are you voting on? Opposed or for? You're muted, sir.
I'm with 4.
Okay, so Councillor Elliott is for, and against it is Mayor Sulz. And Councillor Charlotte, are you for or against?
Oh, this one's a hard one. I see both sides, but I think I'm going to vote for it. I think we just need to have a conversation around this. I'm appreciative that we need to dot our I's and cross our T's, and I really appreciate the process that the OCP is going through. But this is one of those few spots where if there's any way we can bump this along, I'd be in support of that.
Good. So note that all of council is supportive. Mayor Sulz is opposed. Mayor Sulz is opposed because I don't think the staff have the time to get a proper report done in the next 2 weeks. However, let's move on to item 12B, City of New Westminster Letter of Support. This is dealing with laid off hotel and tourism industry workers. They're asking for, City of New Westminster is asking for a letter of support, supporting these laid off people. I've heard some concerns that if this is supported, then maybe people don't want to go back to work. I'm not sure how that plays out. So is there anyone that wants to put this motion on the table to support this moving forward? Or no one wants to touch it, we can leave it. We don't need to do it. Councillor Burksell?
I'll put forward the motion that a letter of support for laid off hotel and tourism industry workers be forwarded to the Minister of Tourism, Arts, Culture and Sport.
Okay, seconder for the motion, Councillor Rind. Any further discussion on the motion? I'll call a question. Councillor Palmer, you have your hand up. You're muted, sir.
Thank you, Mayor Sulz. My concern with this is that it's a one-off and it's not in context of a broader piece of information. I think there's so many implications. So we're dealing specifically here with New Westminster. I think we should be dealing with Revelstoke issues, not that this doesn't have some merit. I'm toying with the, if it stays as it is, I'll be voting against it, but I'm tabling, a possibility is tabling this, but it's like table it for a long, long time until we address our own internal issues and look at this, because there could be long-term other cascading implications of a one-off like this. Also, it's the first time we've really seen it. I know we've had a couple days to take a look at it, but I'm not sure that this is a wise move.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Any other comments, Councillor Charlotte?
Thank you, Your Worship. I share Councillor Palmer's concerns. I'm typically a huge proponent supporting frontline workers in tourism and hospitality. I find this resolution is quite wordy, and having been involved with trying to look at resolution writing and what makes for a good resolution, there are so many clauses in this. It's really fine-tuned for New West. I'm curious about supporting resolutions and building resolutions in the future that does support our community, that does have a Revelstoke flair, but that addresses these issues that are beyond our borders and beyond our jurisdiction. So getting involved in these resolution writing, I think, would be really healthy for our community and really beneficial. However, I agree, we just don't have the capacity to dig into this and make it work right now is a bit of a challenge. However, going forward, I think there's some opportunity for us to continue to work on this policy development. I know I've been talking with the Chamber of Commerce and Maggie Spazzieri, the new president, about that policy work, especially for our small business. of how that can, what should we be chasing that can really benefit our community. I think we can expand that work to work with our social development committee and with other committees in our community of what is the policy that we need to see changed at provincial and federal levels for our community to be able to better, or for us to be able to better serve our community, and chase resolutions in that vein. Jumping on supporting this one, I don't think I support. Thank you.
Great, thank you for your comment. Any other comments from councillors? I'm not in support of this. I think Councillor Palmer and Councillor Charlotte have nailed it on the head. Let's think about things local, and I am concerned about us. Not that I don't want to support the laid-off hotel and tourism industry. However, let's call a question. All those in favor of supporting and writing a support letter, please raise your hand. Those opposed? Councillor Brooks Hill, okay. Note that council's unanimous in opposition. Thank you for that. Moving on to item 12C, correspondence, BC Association of Farmers Market. I'm going to get someone to put this on the table, and then I want to talk about it. Councillor Charlotte.
Thank you, Worship. That a letter be sent to the Minister of Health expressing appreciation for ongoing provincial support for the BC Farmers Market Nutrition Program in Revelstoke.
Thank you for that. Is there a councillor that will second that? Councillor Palmer. So I want to start off by saying, having been associated with farmers markets, my children had a farm and sold corn, and I was able to assist them in that here locally, and saw how well the nutrition coupon program worked, and people would come with tears in their eyes after giving coupons so that they had healthy food to eat. This is a benefit to the community in every way you look at it. And so when I see those people on the street now, they still smile and remember the kindness of the farmers that work so hard. So for everyone who accepts these nutrition coupons, it's an absolute amazing thing that they're doing for the community. And I hope that all of you will support this. Is there other comments from councillors? Seeing none, I'm going to ask the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you for your support. Moving on to 13A, Social Development Committee comments, minutes. Councillor Charlotte, you have a comment?
This was the draft minutes that I was commenting on. I just really appreciated the discussion that was documented around how does the communication flow between council and our committees, and referring for more information, asking these questions so that when we make decisions, we are making them through these various lenses that we subscribe to. And I actually have another comment about one of our reading files. It was another piece of correspondence, but I'm happy to bring it up later if that's okay.
All right. Any other comments on Social Development Committee minutes? Seeing none, we're going to move on to the SILGA 2021 SILGA Community Excellent Award winners. So all of you have seen this now. Revelstoke has won an award under Economic Development, City of Revelstoke Revi Open for Business Facebook page. So it's an awesome thing for our community to be recognized for the work that we're doing in the community to make sure our businesses are being noticed and that they have the ability to continue to do business in a community. Is there anyone that wants to make comment on this award? Seeing none, I kudos go out to those who built this website and actually dealt with it, put it onto Facebook, and it's helped the community immensely. All right, seeing nothing else, do we have any questions from the press? Hearing nothing on that, I'm going to ask to go in camera pursuant to section 90.1G of the Community Charter. Someone want to make that motion? Councillor Brooks Hill, seconded by Councillor Rind. All in favor? Motion's carried. We're going to go in camera. We're going to take a 5-minute break before we start the in camera. Thank you all.